Welcome back to the Mining Your Business podcast, the show all about process mining, data science, and advanced business analytics. I'm Lindsay Ryan, and I'm here with my co-host.
Me, Patrick Bogner, as always.
As always. And today we've got a really exciting episode for you. We're here with our guest, Julian Biswanger, who is head of process excellence and CoE lead for Rittal. If you have ever had questions about the difference between PI versus BI, the impact of time to value on your Celonis success, or the critical first steps for your value framing approach in a process mining initiative, then this is the episode for you.
Let's do it. All right. So, welcome, Julian Biswanger, to our couch, our lovely podcast couch. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me today.
We're glad to have you. I think the most important thing when we get started in an interview is to have a proper introduction. Mm-hmm. I think that we're very excited to have you join us because of your interesting and diverse background. We've collaborated with you, I think, in a number of different contexts now. And your story is one that I think is interesting for members of the process mining and process intelligence community. Would you mind telling us about who you are and your professional experience?
Okay, yeah, sure. So, my name is Julian, 32 years old. So I'm totally out of the classic plotter process analytics phases. So beginning my journey, at least I think it's now 8 to 9 years ago. Mm-hmm. So in the procurement environment, so really transactional, but still also 8 to 9 years ago, the process topic was already there. So therefore, I started in the procurement environment as a forward sourcing project buyer, leading the whole development from a pre-development stage of an article instead of serious readiness, so serious production and the whole procedure behind those. Mm-hmm. Before I changed my way to the consulting environment, I then started first in a boutique consulting in the process and change management environment for automotive. And afterwards at Capgemini Invent, the same on a strategic level. Before then, I got the opportunity to join Celonis, so to get from a manual analytical process perspective in a digital software-based process environment. So that was my personal, I think, best move to get more the technical insights of what is possible within process knowledge and process intelligence. As I'm a little bit technical nerd, so that was quite interesting for me as well, how to use the software to get more deep in an analytical way, how the processes are working. Because as you know, in the classic consulting environment, it is still like you need to get expert interviews.
Sure.
It is long-term and also stressful because the departments are not really happy to get you as a consultant there and to get interviews with you. So they're completely fucked up in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So it's more also interesting to see how this is working without working with the department at first.
Yeah.
So, but come with ideas out of data or root causes or use cases out of that. So that was for me quite interesting. So therefore I joined Celonis as a customer value architect in the first step. So to use my industry knowledge to get the customers in the operational usage of the platform and then switch to the newly outrolled role on a value engineer. So to get the end-to-end journey within the value realization. So identify, frame, realize, sustain. To get the most out of the customer for the software, out of the software. And that was also my first touch point when I joined Celonis. One of my first customers was my current employer. So the Friedhelm Loh Group was one of my first customers there. Where I started on a strategic level. So how do we should set up the operational environment? So the operating model, the steering, where should the process department sit in, etc., etc. So that was really my first touch point within the FLG.
And FLG being
Yeah, the FLG is the Friedhelm Loh Group. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, sorry for that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
So you got in contact with the Friedhelm Loh Group through Celonis, and then they worked with you, and they said, "That's our guy. We got to get him."
So I mean, we had quite an impressive case in the first step at the Friedhelm Loh Group. So the first use case, but it is not a classic Celonis use case, was the SAP mandate consolidation. So as the Friedhelm Loh Group got 13 different SAP systems and mandates, we consolidated all in the first step on a data level, only the data level, in Celonis to see, okay, where do we have
differences and similarities?
How the processor look like? Do we have the same data in each system, etc., etc.? So this was quite the first project within Celonis, and it was more a technical than a really consultative project, to be honest, because what was my job in the project? I got none. Instead of being the steerer and being in some meetings to get the information what is the status quo, but no operational usage at this time.
Okay.
So it was a little bit curious, to be honest, because this was not one of my, let's say, normal customers where you got like order to cash or accounts payable and you go through and say, okay, let's do some use case and get some operational usages. It was a completely technical use case, more on a services consultant side, where the role at Celonis is named. And then Friedhelm Loh Group internal IT project, and not really a business project in the first step.
So now you've talked about how you had experience working in procurement, you went to consulting, you went to Celonis, and then your most recent move after that was to where you are now in Rittal of the Friedhelm Loh Group. Mm-hmm. Your current title is Head of Process Excellence in Rittal. What does that look like? What does your role, your job there really include?
So before I would go through how this happened.
Sure.
So, as I said already, everything was great. So the strategic level was already created, but at the end, you need to operationalize the platform. Afterwards, you had another huge and expensive license without usage, to be honest. And that was my opportunity to operationalize the platform internally. And got more traction out of that and to create my own career out of that. And that was my move then to say, okay, I want to do that together with the Friedhelm Loh Group because the environment was quite good. Also, our CIO is a huge fan out of Celonis and our executive sponsor since today. And therefore, I started my career in the Friedhelm Loh Group as an expert level to get more adoption on the platform, to be the entrepreneur, let's say that. It was like cold calling, but in Microsoft Teams, to be honest. To go from department to department and say, hey, I got here an option, how you could work more efficient, how you could save money, etc. To get, first of all, ideas and then lighthouses within the departments to showcase them, hey, we can help you get more efficient in the next years, in the next days, in the next month. And that was quite a start where the internal career then came out of. So after a few changes internally, so organizational changes, etc., the visibility of the platform and also of the topic process excellence was quite on a level where the Friedhelm Loh Group said, okay, we need to scale in and we need to get this bigger than it was because it is most important also for the huge S4 transformation and for the whole ERP transformation what we got. So we need data and we need processes in a readiness level where we can move on the new ERP environment. So this would never be happen if we are not starting analyzing our processes, analyzing our data. So master data are, for me, the second most important thing next to the processes. Because if you got these two dimensions not in a, let's say, right or clear or understanding level and on a good level, you will never switch to a new ERP system anymore. Yeah. Or you implement shit data what you got in your current system.
Yeah. And new ERP will never fix the broken data that you already have.
Sure, that's it. And out of that, the role was created then for in our own department, where I got now 2 data engineers. and searching 2 more employees to scale the team. And we're in a corporate environment, so the process excellence department is corporate. So we are not only for Rittal or Loh Services, we're also for our major subsidiaries, responsible, for example, ePlan, our biggest software daughter, or CDON, another software daughter, which are not already on the Celonis environment, but for example, ePlan is starting within the CPM, so the process modeling environment. So yeah, we are in a corporate role and currently affecting, I think, most of the departments already. So within Celonis and within use cases, what they're looking out of or which we had already implemented there.
Can I ask what your mandate is? Like, are you looking for high adoption of the Celonis platform within the FLG, or are you looking for specific value? Like, what drives you to spread the Celonis?
I mean, the first step was to get more adoption on the platform, as well as presenting in Lighthouse use cases, let's say to that. So really fast time to value use cases. How fast could we help you in your department to get more efficient? So this was quite the really first step. So afterwards, they saw, hey, what is possible? We got more in depth. For example, in the finance environment, we have, I think, all Celonis apps operational in usage, and also on a global level already in usage. So as you can see, so we started with the duplicate check as a quite common use case, which was not a big value case, to be honest, but it was a good showcase how to work with the platform at the end. Then we scaled up all other accounts payable apps which are needed or which could help us, and rolled them out on a global scale. And this is the same in each department. So we started with a Lighthouse, a small use case, and then going more in depth. Today we are on a point where we are matching our strategic goals within the Celonis use cases. So for example, if we got efficient gains or cost reductions as strategic goal, we are looking into Celonis and into different departments. How could we support these kind of use cases? So the switch is now, let's say a 360-degree switch. So we are not interested anymore in the small efficiency gains use cases. We are looking more on the huge buckets now.
Mm-hmm. And you make lighthouses. Like, how do you know, how many have you done? Let's start there.
We did about 20 lighthouses. So in 20 departments, to be honest.
Okay. How do you pick them? Like, how do you know that this use case, this lighthouse project, is suitable for that department to show them the success of Celonis? Do you have like a metric that you can use saying, oh, that's not a good idea because it's not going to show them the value? Or like, what's your method?
So to be honest, the first was on a strategic level to see what are our most important end-to-end processes and where do we need to get Celonis in. So, for example, we started really with the departments which are in operations, in supply chain environment, or in sales, because these are the most important departments within the whole group. Yeah, because in sales, the money is in, and operations and supply chain, the most costs are in. So for me, it was totally clear to start there. But not on a classic Celonis way to say, okay, hey, we are so funny, we have here 10 million and let's go into it. No, I got more the perspective of, hey, let's talk about what is really a pain point at the moment in your department, and could we fix it within Celonis? So not the classic way, for example, to say, we have here an app, and do you want to use this app in an operational way? And this could be a use case. No, we are really onto the pain points of the departments. And that was our lighthouses. So this was no classic app use case. This was, for example, digitizing a reporting, which was completely high manual effort, or got an automatic alert because they didn't know what's happening in the system. So really easy use cases, really fast time to value, about maximum 4 to 8 weeks on development time to showcase, hey, we are fast and you are more efficient and you get more insights and transparency out of your data.
Really winning the hearts of the end users, it sounds like.
To be honest, so we were not like finger pointing. We are more, so still today, my support is my supportive approach, I think, is the most advantage what we are using. So we are not like, okay, look up, your numbers are shit, or we can save more money in your department. So we are more in a supportive way to say, hey, we can support you within your problems if you want to. So you don't need to get in contact with us or work with us, but if you want to improve your data, if you want to improve your business, could be possible that we can help you. To be honest, Celonis is not the magic quadrant who is the solution for everything. So this is also one of our learnings. So we could not fix every problem within Celonis, because as you know, departments are getting familiar within Celonis and then think, okay, we can do everything on Celonis. But this is not the use case at the end of the day. So, for example, there was a tick missing in the SAP environment to automatically send order confirmation, and they wanna do that in Celonis as a use case. So, but after framing and analyzing the use case, it was like, okay, please let's put this tick on a automatic way within our SAP basis and not take our time and money for get another use case on Celonis.
Yeah.
I think it's always an interesting sort of trade-off of there's a lot of opportunities with Celonis or this kind of platform where you can change your process and make fixes. And it is a constant trade-off of, am I creating a sort of band-aid on the process that is maybe a quick fix to repair whatever challenge we're facing? Or is it possible to go into SAP and fix it at the source? And what solution is relevant at the right time? It depends on the strategic elements, the complexity, buy-in sometimes from IT. But I always like to hear the different perspectives of how do you evaluate what is something to do in Celonis versus something where you say, actually, we can do that in a different platform. So in this case, it was identified to fix it in SAP. But do you have any insight on why this choice? Just from the straight up resource trade-off or other strategic considerations?
I mean, normally our strategy is always getting the solution into the main ERP system, to be honest, because we see Celonis as a data duplication out of our ERP data, and like the next Z, as some of our IT developers say. So in SAP, you got the Z transactions for things which are not in the standard environment. Now we are looking on the Z transactions or on some special kind of things which are not possible within the standard SAP environment and put them into Celonis. For example, consolidating data out of different databases and consolidate them into Celonis, or more views from SAP consolidating in Celonis in one major view. So these are kind of use cases which we know, okay, this is not possible within the SAP environment. We can use Celonis, as well as for real-time data, to be honest. For example, the SAC, so the new analytics cloud from SAP, is not it's not performant to deliver 1 minute actualizations for data. But this is also not the use case for the SAC. So the SAC is for reporting on monthly basis, on quarterly basis, etc. This is the use case for the SAC. But the Celonis use case, for example, is real-time data monitoring, tracking, short time frames, huge data in a fast way. So this is, for example, where we also discussed internally, where is the cut between BI and PI? Because we got a lot of discussions. When do we use business intelligence and when do we use process intelligence? And one of the major outcomes there is we're using process intelligence when we have high volume of data where we want to analyze or going more in depth. Real-time data, short data times, these are clear advantages for process intelligence and not for business intelligence, because this is not possible with business intelligence, and it's also not the use case for business intelligence, to be honest. But this diversification was needed to get more sharpness within the different systems, because also BI got their advantages. So for the end user, as well as for okay, I want to see how is the KPIs going through. But you will never go more in depth out of the business outcome within a BI tool, because this is not the case for a BI tool. Then you are in the process intelligence environment.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting, because I've heard a lot of different definitions of what BI is and what process intelligence PI is, and where people draw that line, right? I've heard everything is BI, PI is just PI, just a subset of it, right? So how do you personally define PI versus BI?
I mean, to be honest, we're really special. Also in this environment, we are currently creating a position paper for that kind of, to then get this in our Confluence internally after we got this ready. So our goal is till the end of the year to get a whole position paper out of, don't know, 20, 30, 40 pages at the end. Where is the whole definition of what is BI, what is PI, where is the operational usage of a BI case versus a PI case? How is also the data architecture is looking? So where do Celonis got the data? So for example, we had a clear understanding of the KPI definition is made in the SAC, because the SAC is the major reporting also for our top management. So therefore, the definition of the KPIs, for example, DSO, DIO, etc., is happen in the SAC and in the data sphere. But in Celonis, we need the same data and the same KPI definitions as well too. But for that case, we said, okay, then we need a connection out of the data sphere and the SAC to Celonis to get the same KPIs, but the KPI definition and the majority of the KPI is still in the SAC, for example. And as we do that for the KPIs, we did this also for the whole BI and PI topic. So for me, the difference between BI and PI is how depth you want to analyze your data. If you want to visualize only some data or KPIs, BI is fine. If you want to create a visualization out of your KPIs, use BI. If you want to get a better understanding out of your data and go more in depth, what is really the business outcome and what is really the pain point, you need the PI environment, because we'll never go in that detailed granularity of your data in a BI environment.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's a really good definition.
I'm probably going to read this paper.
To be honest, we discussed a lot about that. So
will this this paper, the position that you're working on, will it be public, or is that for your internal Confluence only?
Yeah, it's primary for our internal audience, because we had, as I said, we had a lot of discussions and still have a lot of discussions in different departments. Okay, should we use Celonis now for this reporting? Yeah, depends on. So it's always a depends on.
Yeah.
So, but on a lot of cases, we can now say, okay, no, this is not a case for Celonis. Please use a BI tool or something like that. But yeah, as I said, depends on.
Yeah, it's tricky. So then now you're at the point where you're really choosing what use cases are relevant for Celonis, where to invest your resources with this focus on operationalization. And value is also really important.
Yeah.
What is your general approach to value realization? What would you say are your main recommendations or lessons learned for how to best do value realization in a CoE?
I mean, first of all, I think the most interesting point and the most relevant point here is to get a committed value framework with your controlling. So this should be the first step before talking about value and how to calculate value.
Okay.
Because at the end, you need controlling aligned with you to get the same understanding of value and also to get the same calculation on the values. Because otherwise, you can draw any number there, but it has no visibility at the end of the day, because controlling
sees something completely different.
Yeah, sees completely different or see no value behind this case.
Okay.
So first of all, that I think it was nearly a year, to be honest, where I discussed with controlling what are really the metrics, what we are looking on value. And at the end, we're looking only on P&L effects on 3 different dimensions. So we have the as-is costs, so P&L as-is. We have cost avoidance P&L, and we have calculative P&L costs. Yeah, productivity in P&L.
Okay.
So these three metrics at the end are our major value metrics, as well as quality factors as soft value, let's say that.
Okay.
But the rest is matched on these three metrics at the end. So we are only looking on P&L, because at the end, also our owner said, okay, only P&L is that what I'm interested in, and this is what we can see in the books.
Yeah.
And
which is a fair point.
Yeah, fair point.
Yeah.
To be honest, at the end, he is right. So if we are getting as is costs, so this is quite the next quarterly report happen, or in the year report, depending on when the P&L costs are saved.
Okay.
Cost avoidance is also visible because we got more money in the cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And calculatory costs, okay, yeah, that depends on. Because at the end, this is productivity measured in euros.
Okay.
But for example, if we are then not in need to get 5 more employees in a department, this is quite also a stunning saving. Or for example, on a demographic level, someone is going into layoff.
Okay.
Due to his full years of working. And this position is not needed anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be not replaced by a new person. The position will be
sunsetted.
Yeah, sunsetted. Yeah.
So no cost of working capital involved in, or does that fit in one of these categories?
Working capital is not included in that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so then that means you had these conversations before any use case is really on the table. That's step one,
in
align
parallel,
with controlling.
Let's say
okay.
That. So for sure, so the value focus was from the beginning on. There could be that this happened due to my past role within Celonis, but we always measured what is the value of the use cases. So
yeah.
We started from the beginning on to track the value. So what is really the business outcome out of that? But in a first step, only on a value level, then value versus costs of implementation.
Okay.
And now we are going through TCO costs. So total costs of ownership. So internal costs, external costs versus value measured in ROI per year.
All right.
Yeah, so now we are more advanced.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. I can imagine that this sort of very value first approach of defining what are our value building blocks can be really helpful, because
Yes.
when you're otherwise scoping a use case, I think trying to talk about what value means, how do we measure it?
Yeah.
If you don't know already what your options are, then this can become an overwhelming or inefficient discussion quite often.
Yeah, to be honest, this is part of our scoping. So before we are going into an implementation, part of our scoping is also the value discussion within the department where the use case is laying, to get an understanding of, okay, when we are doing this, what is happening afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
This is completely normal, and all departments where we are working together know that.
Mm-hmm.
And this procedure is still quite good, to be honest. So, okay, we got, as you know, you have always a little hypothesis into it, because in a very first step, it is quite not that easy on every use case to say, okay, this is the hard value we want to realize, but you need a targeted value somehow and sharp this afterwards if you got the frame value. So the databases, you get more in sharp of, is this really the value out of that? And in the best case, you got a sustainable value tracking afterwards where you can see, okay, is this really happening or not?
So the value tracking needs to be in place in the scoping part, or at least the definition of it, before you guys even start.
I mean, you should discuss this. How do you want to track the value afterwards? So if this is a P&L case, which is on SS costs, for example, it is quite easy because in the next quarterly report, the value would be visible. So I don't think that you are really primarily in need to track this value separately in a dashboard. But the best way, to be honest, is to track the value in value tracking dashboards within Celonis to get really the hypothesis next to the current really realized value. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
From everything you're saying, it sounds like you've taken a lot of the learnings and experience from being a value engineer, being the architect from Celonis as his previous role, and brought it with you. Is there anything that you needed to learn when you switched from Celonis to then being a CoE lead for Rittal? Was there anything that was surprising or something that you weren't ready for, despite having this, in my opinion, really solid preparation background from your previous experience?
I mean, first of all, you need to understand you're in a complete different environment. So as an external consulting, you are not in that environment as in an internal role. So you have a lot of more trust if you're an internal employee than if you're external, to be honest.
We know.
Yeah, we are.
Can confirm.
It's completely different. So, and I think this is the first thing what you need to learn. How the change is coming through your counterparts.
Okay.
So based on an employee level, on the VP level, on the heads of level, on the SVP level, how they are working with you is how the trust level at the end of the day is in your work for them. And if they're understanding you're a trusted person, you're supportive, and you bring not only something on the table and say, okay, you want to do that, you bring solutions at the end of the day, and the solutions are visible for them, then you got the trust level you need to get more in depth and in more complex use cases also in the departments. I think this was the main learning, how to work internally with different levels of stakeholders in the best way to get most, at the end, value and business cases out of that and support them in the best way. And this is different from stakeholder to stakeholder because as we are different persons, every stakeholder has their own strategic goals, has their own kind of thinking also, and how they drive their projects on forward, how they work with their teams together. And this is a lot of change management, what you need to understand first when you're joining internally, before you can go through the department and working really in a hands-on way and getting more use cases out of that. And the whole change management is the major stack of learning first.
Now, when you were talking earlier about how you're going around to the departments saying, hey, we have this tool, it can do this for you, we can help you with this and this and this. Are you interested? You want to work together, blah, blah, blah. Kind of sounds like what we're doing, but within one company, right? So is that the approach that you took from Celonis? Like, hey, I'm very good at approaching people and framing value and all these things. Did you develop that yourself, or was that like kind of discussed on how you would go about it?
No, I mean, this was try and error at the end for myself as an entrepreneur, let's say that.
Yeah.
How can I go into departments and get a good fit and a possible supportive approach to work with them together? So, and I mean, I knew that from the Celonis point of view, or also from other companies which Celonis was working with, the approach with finger pointing on, okay, hey, in your department is X million of value. Let's realize that together is not always the best way, because departments are felt like, okay, how an external or also an internal is looking on our data and say, okay, here is really value, or we are working shit, or some kind of, is not the best approach.
Yeah. You don't want to have the people say, who are you?
Yeah. To be honest, this is quite normal, because a completely out of space person is coming to you and set up a meeting and say, hey, there are 10 millions of euros, so let's realize that together. And you are like, where do you know that these 10 millions are really there? So, and then you got in the first discussion and, oh, no, let's filter that out and that and that. And then from the 10 millions at the end, 1 million is left. And they say, so what are you talking about? So now we are at 1 million, you said 10 million. So, and then you have another problem. And the problem is then not the trust level. Then the problem is they are not want to work with you anymore because they say, okay, what are you telling us? So you're telling us shit. And the end is 1/10 out of that what you said is at the end happen.
Even if possible. 1 million would be good.
1 million sounds great.
But a million is always never as good as 10 million.
10 million.
10 million is always better.
Yeah.
Now, so this sounds like you're very much based on fostering trust with the people that you're working with. Now being the internal, working with external, has your view of external coming in changed at all, and how?
Yeah, to be honest, yeah, sure, because you know how externals are pushing their own services and their own ideas to our internals or to our departments. You see that on a different level and also on another filter, to be honest, because you know what is really possible and what is not possible. That's the same. For example, if someone is telling you, okay, let's get a license upgrade and everything will be subscribed in 2 weeks. This will never happen in the industry, to be honest. So no one will subscribe anything in 2 weeks because the internal processes are a lot of more different than an external knows. Yeah, for sure. That's the reality. But also the steering is different, as an internal. So as we're working with you, so in sprints, for example, that was quite the best idea, to be honest.
Okay.
To work in this agile environment, because based on that, we are super flexible what kind of use case is now on the top level priority, and we can switch this every 2 weeks. So we are really flexible in how to prioritize new if something crazy is happening, or if another really high value use case is coming in, we can say, okay, let's prioritize this one because we got most out of that instead of the 5 use cases we were working on the previous weeks. So this makes, for me, the steering quite better, to be honest, as an external before, because I got now both eyeglasses at the end of the day. So I see the external working and I see the internal priorities, and our priorities are switching due to new year targets, demographic changes, political environments. So, for example, the new tariffs out of the US. So, for real though, tariffs are now more interesting than a year ago. I mean, this is happening due to our politics. So, but we can act out of that better if I know, for example, this is a case where our supply chain department is looking also on. So I can prioritize, for example, use cases in the environment of tariffs or cost reduction in transport logistics or some kind of, which is now quite an interesting case. 1 year ago, that was no case for Celonis, as due to the fact that it was not a priority and the department was not on that detailed level in Celonis where it is now. So you have different factors which are coming then together to go more in depth in a use case, because you need the departments working longer within Celonis to get a better understanding of how work with the platform, how we are using the data, how they use the data to get more actions out of that. And then you can go more in deep within the same department on kind of use cases like tariffs, for example, which is quite a stunning use case. But it's not the first touch use case because you have longer development times, you have more departments involved. So this would be not a Lighthouse use case at the beginning, for example.
So basically doing sprints and things like that allows you to pivot to specific use cases much faster than like a classic waterfall approach would do.
I would highly recommend this kind of working mode for all kind of CoE leads. or heads of process excellence, to be honest, to get the agiles and best way how to implement a new use case. So I think the Agile framework is quite the best one you can use at the moment.
Now, you mentioned this already, but you also said that you're working with us as a consulting company.
Yeah.
As much as I would love to talk about how great we are.
The best.
The best, of course. What is your opinion, you as the lead of head of process excellence, why bring in an external company like ours?
So for me, the most relevant fact is the delivery. So the quality of the delivery at the end of the day, the knowledge and the time to value, to be honest, at the end of the day. And these combined, for example, on the consultants or on the data scientists which we are working with, is for me the most value I can get from an external service at the end of the day. And this is the combination why I choose the process end at the end of the day, because you got a strong industry knowledge. You got a good understanding out of what is really needed and what could be the solution. And at the end, we are fast. So, and the last point is the most important, to be honest, because no one process excellence use cases are not common projects, as you know, a project in a huge company. For example, S4HANA is a huge project. But each business case is at first on top resources which are which we bind on a smart project, let's say to that, where it is only clear, okay, there is a value and we want to realize that, but the effort is added to the daily business, to the normal project, etc., etc. And if we would not be fast in delivering use cases, no one would recommend or realize how valuable our work is and how valuable our solutions are. Because the time to value is nowadays, I think, the most important for each department.
Really? What makes you say that?
We are in a fast changing environment and in a data-driven environment. And both happen with high speed at the end of the day due to new systems, AI, new challenges, political problems. So you have a lot of different environmentals which are changing weekly if you have some bad days. And therefore you need to react really fast. And for me, this fast reaction is only possible if you're fast in delivering value and fast in delivering outcome. And delivering outcome needs not to be the complexest solution at the end of the day. It needs to be the best fit for the business. And the best fit for the business is not always a complex solution, to be honest, because the complex solutions which we had already implemented in were the ones which got the longest time to value at the end of the day, the longest implementation. And at the end, the value was like, it was okay, but not as promised at the beginning, to be honest, because the time to value was so long. But the best valuable use cases at the moment within the whole group, what we had already developed, 4 to 8 weeks development time frame and high in value. And in operational usage, in daily operational usage at the end of the day.
So it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to cover everything. But as long as it covers a lot of things and it's relatively easy to implement and robust, that's the one you go for.
Yes, I mean, an 80-20 approach is the best solution, to be honest. You got 80% of the problem fixed in the first, let's say, version. And afterwards, you can implement and adjust version 1.5 or some kind of. But start really with an 80% approach on your major issue and then scale it up. Because in the operational usage, a lot of new problems are coming up. So, for example, a filter is missing. Or, could we create the same view for a different kind of blah, blah, blah. So the really good thing is that the people starting to think about their continuous improvement for themselves and then come back to you with new ideas with adjustments, etc., etc. And normally the adjustments are not the ones you defined before in the really complex way in the first step of the use case.
So it needs to be iterative.
Yes.
People always realize what they want once they're already using it.
And this is the best one because the operational work and the people who are using the tool at the end of the day are the experts. And they need to understand, okay, if I had this filter, I save for myself 2, 5, 6 minutes more, or I got the data in another way filtered, etc., etc. But this is only possible from the experts within the department and not from our point of view from a process excellence department, for example.
All right. I think we're coming up on time. So I would like to thank you, Julian, for coming on the show, talking with us. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure also for me. Thanks.
Yeah. A lot of really solid insights, a lot of really interesting topics that I'm really glad we got to talk about. And maybe even I would say you're always welcome back. We can do a deep dive once your full definition about PI versus BI comes out. If possible, to share that, I think that could be also a whole podcast episode in and of itself. Until then, thank you so much for joining us. And
dear listeners, if you have thoughts about the episode, feel free to write us on LinkedIn or leave some comments on wherever you're watching this. We'll be sure to read it. And until next time.